Good morning. Good morning. All right. It's good to see you. We are in the book of Judges, as you know. And if we can go to slide 4, I'm going to talk really, really fast today, so listen fast. We've got 4 pages. If you printed it or looked at it, this is a chapter of 57 verses. Wonderful verses. Great story. Let me do a quick introduction. We have on the map, we have in yellow, we have the judges that we have already studied. We have Othniel down in the bottom, who was Caleb's nephew. Up in the top, we have Shamgar. Shamgar was one verse. He killed 600 people with an ox goad. And so now you know everything that is to be known about Shamgar. And then we have Ehud, who was the left-handed guy that buried a dagger into Eglon all the way until, Catherine, until...
What? I'm not paying attention.
Eglon, Ehud buried a sword in Eglon.
Oh, the big fat guy.
The big fat guy, the big fat king. That's right. And we'll leave the rest of the story out. And then we had Deborah, the wonderful story of Deborah with her commander Barak, who was chasing Sisera, the enemy, and he got nailed by Jael, a woman in the tent with a tent peg, which was awesome. And then we have Gideon. Now, before we get into the story of Abimelech, let's go to slide 5. I want you to recall this slide, which was in our introduction. And a judge in the book of Judges, this is Shophatim. Shophatim is plural, and that does not equal Judge Judy. A Shophatim was a leader or a deliverer or an arbiter of justice. And as we've studied these judges, although many of them have frailties of human nature and of mankind, they are still deliverers. They do something to accomplish God's purpose in the cycle of sin that goes over and over and over. However, we come to Abimelech today, who I personally do not believe should be deemed a judge. The story, there's nothing about him that he is a leader, but there's nothing about being a deliverer. There's nothing about him being an arbiter of justice. He is a bad, bad dude, and I don't think he serves any good purpose. However, one of my favorite resources of all time is gotquestions.org, and gotquestions.org believes, and they will say that Abimelech was a judge, so he qualifies as a judge. And although I believe that's the greatest resource, that's one or two of the areas where they're absolutely wrong because they don't agree with me. And so let's quickly go through the story of Gideon, because Abimelech is the son of Gideon. And we'll recall that Gideon comes onto the scene as the Midianites have invaded Israel, and they would invade every year. 135,000 men from Midian, and the Amalekites and the Arabians the Arabs come over, and they are looting everything that there is in Israel. God chooses Gideon, and he comes to him at night in a wine press as he's hiding and treading out grain in a wine press, and he says, "O mighty man of valor." And Gideon is like, "Who, me?" And he says, "I'm going to choose you to deliver all of Israel." Gideon doesn't understand that, and he says, "How can that be? Because I am the weakest of my clan, the Abizarites, and the Abizarites are the weakest of Manasseh." And he gives him a mission. The first mission is to go break down the altars that are at his father's house, the altar to Baal, and then he breaks down an Asherah pole, and all the people of Shechem come out to kill him. His father stops him and says, if Baal is such a god, let him contend for himself. And his name was changed to Jerubbaal at that point. Gideon became Jerubbaal, which means let Baal contend. So God tells him that he's going to be the great deliverer, and he asks for a sign. He said, "Show me a sign." And we go through the fleece test. The fleece had to be wet, and then the next morning it had to be dry. And he eventually is convinced, and he blows a shofar to four tribes send 32,000 men to fight against the Midianites. 32,000. There should have been 212,000. For some reason, only 32,000 come to fight. God says that's too many. Take the ones who are fearful and let them go home. 22,000 of the 32,000 go home because they're afraid. So it's 10,000 versus 35,000, and God says, I can't let you have this number of people, because if you do, you will boast that it was you and not me. And so they have this famous test of lapping the water, and they get down to 300 men, and God sends 300 men into a camp at night of 135,000 with a torch, a jar, and a shofar, each of them. That causes the Midianite army to go in disarray. They begin to fight sword on sword. They kill each other, and they go on this massive fleet out, headed south across the Jordan. Gideon, right here at this point in the story, we cease to see God operating at all in the story. He's not talking to Gideon. Gideon comes to a town called Sukkoth and Penuel, and he asks for bread, and they refuse to give it. And he says, I am going to come back, and I'm going to torture you and kill you. And so he ends up killing the 2 kings of the Midianites, and he comes back, and he absolutely tortures the men of Sukkoth, and he kills the men of Penuel. And then in his after victory story, what we see is that he had 70 sons, many wives, and he had one son named Abimelech to a concubine who lives in Shechem. Carolyn and I are living outside of our house, in our lake house, because of her painting project. And we have 2 of our sons that have families, and they are outside of their house because their house is being remodeled, and so they are alternating in living with us, which is great because my grandkids are perfect. And however, the problem that our sons have is that they invite their friends who have kids, and their kids are not perfect. And so as I thought about these 70 people, and yesterday we had one in particular that was anything but perfect, that was at our house, and I sat down with Carolyn last night and I said, we've been married 38 years, and I just want you to know that if this doesn't work out between you and I have decided that I'm not going to have more kids. And she said, you're an idiot. Yes, I am guilty. And with that, we'll kick off.
Now Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem to his mother's relatives and said to the whole clan of his mother's family, say in the ears of all the leaders of Shechem, which is better to you, that all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you? Remember also that I am your bone and flesh. And his mother's relatives spoke all these words on his behalf in the ears of all the leaders of Shechem, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-berith, and with which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless followers who followed him. And he went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men, on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And all the leaders of Shechem came together at Beth Millo, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar at Shechem.
Now Abimelech, which means my father is king, Gideon named his son, my father is king, the son of Jerubbaal, and Jerubbaal means let Baal contend, as we've said, and from this point in the story, no longer do we see the name Gideon. It's Jerubbaal the whole time. And so he goes to Shechem. Shechem is a Canaanite city. Let's go to slide 7. So you'll see Shechem down in the south, and Gideon's hometown, Ophrah, in the north. And as I talked last week, a concubine would stay with her family, and the man would have conjugal visits and leave her there. The son of a concubine would have no part of the inheritance, and so he is, in essence, disenfranchised from the family. We know that Shechem is a Canaanite city because in the Amarna letter on the right, there's references from a Canaanite king writing to Pharaoh in Egypt, and that was in 1400 BC. This story takes place around 1200 BC. And so there is no record of Joshua killing are wiping out the Canaanites in Shechem. What we know is that throughout the Bible story, this was a town of Canaanites. And as we go through this story, it's clear that there are different people, different blood, and so it's still a Canaanite city. And so back to the scriptures, he goes to Shechem to his mother's relatives. So this is his mother, the concubine. And he says to the whole clan of them, who is a different bloodline, say unto the ears of all of Shechem, which is better for you, that all 70 sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you? Now, just to refresh your memory, we have Gideon. The men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us, you and your son and your grandson, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian. And Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. And Gideon said to them, let me make a request of every one of you to give me the earrings of his spoil, for they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, we will willingly give them. And they spread a cloak, and every man threw into it earrings of his spoil. So he refuses to be king, and he is not going to be king, but he acts like a king. And so right now we have him acting like a king, and Abimelech says, okay, I can see he's acting like a king. And so one of his sons is going to end up being king. And so you're my people, you Canaanites. You should have me. I'm bone of your bone and flesh of your flesh. And we go over to chapter 8, verse 30. Now Gideon had 70 sons, his own offspring, for he had many wives, and his concubine who was in Shechem bore him a son, and she called his name Abimelech. So this is his people. And he says, remember that I am bone of your bone and flesh of your flesh. In verse 3, it says, and his mother's relatives spoke all these words on behalf of the ears of the leaders of Shechem, and their hearts were inclined to follow him. So even though Gideon had said, I'm not going to be your king, I'm not going to lord over you, they say, okay, we'll take a king. We want Abimelech. We want a Canaanite over us. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver. Now, a piece of silver is translated in the Hebrew language to shekel. And a shekel is 11 grams. 11 grams in today's money, and the closing price last Friday would equal $700. So they're going to take $700, divide it up among, what does it say, worthless and reckless fellows. And a better translation for once in the Bible is in the King James. It's not reckless, it's empty. It's empty and reckless fellows. And what it means is they're not empty here, they're empty here. They have no conviction, they have no heart, and they're reckless. They don't care about the consequences whatsoever. So these are people with no moral standard, who have no conviction and no compulsion and have no issues with anything they're going to do. And they take 700 people and they kill 70 brothers on one stone. And what that symbolizes is that they have one large stone and there is a process. This is a cruel, this is annihilation one by one, walking them up with the sword and cutting their heads off one by one on one stone. And so, but Jotham is the youngest, and his name means Yahweh is perfect, and this is a sign that Gideon, even at the end, had some connection with God, naming his son Yahweh is perfect. The youngest son of Jerubbaal was left and hid for himself, and all the leaders of Shechem came together, and they came from Beth Milo. Beth Milo is a fortress that is in Shechem. And they went and made Abimelech king by the oak at Shechem. Joshua 24, I want you to understand what happens. This happens at the oak of the pillar at Shechem. In Joshua 24, Shechem is a place of deep, deep historical significance. Deep historical significance. I'll go through it. But one of the most important things was required by Moses when the Israelites crossed over into Israel, and that was to repeat the covenant that God had made. And so they went to two mountains, Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, and that is on each side of Shechem. Shechem means shoulder, and the shoulder is in between these two mountains. And he put 6 tribes up on one side, on Gerizim, and he put 6 tribes up on Mount Ebal. And the tribes on Mount Gerizim would repeat the blessings that were promised if they honored the covenant with God. And the 6 tribes on Mount Ebal repeated the curses. And so one of the greatest lines, and it was probably on a placard your mother had on a refrigerator growing up, comes from this story that takes place at Shechem. And I'm just going to read the highlights from Joshua 24, verse 14. Joshua said, "Now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and faithfulness, and put away the gods your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt." Skipping down, "Choose this day whom you will serve." Skipping down, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." They answered, "Therefore we will also serve the Lord." But Joshua said to the people, "You are not able to serve the Lord, for he's a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions or your sins." And they respond, "No, but we will serve the Lord." And then he responds, "Then put away the foreign gods that are among you and incline your heart to the Lord, for he's the God of Israel." Over and over, after they've already crossed over, they've carried these false gods, and they're carrying them with them. And so Joshua made a covenant with the people that day, and he put in place statutes and rules for them at Shechem. And Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God, and he took a large stone, and he set it up there under the terebinth tree, which translates oak. He put a large stone, a pillar, beside an oak. That was the sanctuary of the Lord. And at this pillar and at this oak is where this entire story takes place. So let's go to slide 11. Actually, let's go to slide 8. So slide 8, they get the 700 pieces from a place called the Temple of Baal-bereth. Baal-bereth means Baal, God of the covenant. This is an archaeological find at Shechem that is the actual temple that they believe all of this occurred at. Now, let's go to slide 9. I want to go through everything that happened in the Bible. This is a great chart that shows the significant events that happened at Shechem, beginning with God's promise to Abraham. And in Genesis 12, God says, "To your offspring I will give all this land." It's the first part of the covenant. And this covenant of God, which is a unilateral covenant, happens over and over and over. And he promises them a blessing, and he promises them a multitude, and he promises the land. But this is the first of the land. Jacob purchases the land, and he dedicates an altar to God, the God of Israel. We have the great story of Dinah and Shechem. Shechem, who was a Canaanite, rapes Dinah. And the sons of Jacob two of the sons, Simeon and Levi, decide to take matters into their own hands. Hamor, the father of Shechem, comes and says to Jacob, "Look, he shouldn't have done this, but he's decided that he loves Dinah, and he wants to be married to her. We want our people to be your people. We want our sons to marry your daughters, and our daughters to marry your sons. And so what do we have to do?" And Simeon and Levi say, well, what they need to do is they all need to be circumcised if they're going to be part of us. So all the men of Shechem get circumcised. And on day 2 or day 3, when they are in pain, the Bible says, Simeon and Levi come through and they kill every swinging one of them. They kill every one of them. And there's a part of me that likes that story. But evidently Jacob thought that that was a little bit excessive to kill every single person when it wasn't. But this is a seminal turning point in the people of Shechem and the people of Israel, and it plays out in this story. We also see Joseph's bones buried in Shechem. We see the covenant renewal that I just read and the public reading. Let's go to slide 10. So this is exactly where it took place. On the left, you'll see Mount Gerizim. You'll see Shechem in the middle, and you'll see Mount Ebal on the right. And in the middle, on the right-hand picture, you'll see that it's a natural amphitheater. It's a mile apart. And even today, they say that you can go up on the mountain and you can begin to talk, and it has it's a natural amphitheater where you can actually hear from many, many miles away. And so slide 11, practical takeaways. Charisma does not equal character. Abimelech's persuasive speech wins support, but his heart is corrupt. 1 Samuel 16:7 says, man looks at the outward appearance, but the God looks at the heart. And secondly, about Abimelech, unchecked ambition is deadly. Abimelech's rise is fueled by self-interest and violence. James 3:16 says, when you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. Sharon?
When it was told to Jotham, he went and stood on top of Mount Gerizim and cried aloud and said to them, listen to me, you leaders of Shechem, that God may listen to you. The trees once went out to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, shall I leave my abundance by which gods and men are honored and go and hold sway over the trees? And the trees said to the fig tree, you come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, shall I leave my sweetness and my good vine and my good fruit and go hold sway over the trees? And the trees said to the vine, you come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, shall I leave the wine that cheers God and men and go hold sway over the trees? Then all the trees said to the bramble, you come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, if in good faith you were anointing me king over you, then come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if you acted in good faith and integrity when you made Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done to him as his deeds deserved, for my father fought for you and risked his life and delivered you from the hand of Midian, and you have risen up against my father's house this day, and have killed his sons, 70 men on one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his female servant, king over the leaders of Shechem, because he is your relative. If you have acted in good faith and integrity with Jerubbaal, and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come down from Abimelech and devour the leaders of Shechem and Beth Milo, and let fire come out of the leaders of Shechem from Beth Milo and devour Abimelech. And Jotham ran away and fled and went to Beer and lived there because of Abimelech, his brother.
So this is the first parable in the Bible. If you remember when we went through Luke, we had all these parables, and I constantly talked about what a parable is. Parabole, which comes from the Greek word, means to cast along beside, and it means to cast a truth beside some other representative example. And so he's casting along beside the truth these trees, and it's clear who the bramble is, right? It's clear that Abimelech is Bramble. Now, in a parable, you're not supposed to over-allegorize the story. You're supposed to look at the principal meaning. And the principal meaning here is that Abimelech is Bramble, and it's ludicrous to think that Bramble, which is tumbleweed, could possibly provide shade. There's nothing good about tumbleweed at all. Tumbleweed does not provide fruit. It does not provide shade. It doesn't provide food of any kind. It's nothing but a nuisance that is subject to combustion. And so what is relevant is that these three different trees and vines all are used throughout the Bible to represent Israel. So the olive tree, the grapes, all of them represent the figs. They all in different parts of the Bible represent Israel, and they all have a purpose, right? They all have, the olive tree is to bring olive, and the vine is to bring grapes that bring joy to wine to joy to God and man through wine. And I listen to these verse-by-verse preachers, and it's funny to listen to a Baptist preacher try to talk about how wine brings joy to God. And I'm like, it's okay. I know we're Baptists, but it's actually okay. One of the first ceremonies that God instituted as part of the tabernacle was the offering of wine. So it's actually okay. But it's crazy to think that tumbleweed is going to shade. Wine, olives, figs, all have fruits and a purpose. And I do think it's not over allegorizing to say that we all have a purpose. That in this story, if we were placed into this parable, we have a purpose. I believe that I have a purpose in my secular life to lead with care and character and integrity, and that's the way I should lead. I should be seen with all three of those attributes. And when it comes to family, I should be setting an example, and I believe that I can set an example for our sons and their families. And when it comes to my walk with God, I think I'm called to teach the Bible. You may not think I'm called to teach, but I think I'm called to teach the Bible, whether it's here or whether it is with my grandchildren. That's the purpose I'm called for. And to leave that and to go do something else would not be, I would feel out of place. And so these trees should stay where they are, but the last thing they need is to have King Bramble. Go to slide 14. King Bramble. There's a picture, there's a picture of Bramble. There's nothing in that that's good. There's nothing in that. That is Abimelech. And so Jotham says in his parable, he's like, okay, people, if you acted in good faith, putting Abimelech up as king, if you acted with integrity, realizing that my father is the reason that you're alive and that you have safety, if you acted with good faith, then God bless you. If you put him in and it was of good intention and a good heart, God bless you. But if you didn't act with integrity, and if you put him in for some other reason, then I hope the fire from that bramble burns those trees, and I hope those trees burn that bramble. I hope you both burn each other down. And he takes off, and he goes and gets himself a beer. Beer actually means well. He fled, and he went, and he may have actually hid in a well. So on slide 15, for me, this is actually one of the most important takeaways, even more so than when we get to the end, that we're accountable for our followership, that when we look to people to admire, when we look to people to follow, when we look to people to learn from, that are going to edify us, that are going to influence how we conduct our lives, we're going to be held accountable for who we look to. God wants us to hold up godly people as examples and godly people that influence us, and we're going to be held accountable for everything that we do. When we sit in front of that bema seat that's referred to in Romans 14:12, it's not going to be just us walking up and saying, God, let me tell you what I did. It's going to be God saying, look, I gave you all of this. What did you do? What did you do with it? Tell me, give me what you did with it. All right, Wes. Easy. Easy, Philly.
Abimelech ruled over Israel 3 years, and God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem. And the leaders of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid on Abimelech their brother, who killed them, and on the men of Shechem, who strengthened his hands to kill his brothers. And the leaders of Shechem put men in ambush against him on the mountaintops, and they robbed all who passed by them along the way. And it was told to Abimelech. And Gal, the son of Ebed, moved into Shechem with his relatives, and the leaders of Shechem put confidence in him. And they went out into the field and gathered the grapes from the vineyards and trod them and held a festival. And they went into the house of their God and ate and drank and reveled Abimelech. And Gal, the son of Ebed, said, Who is Abimelech, and who are we of Shechem, that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal, and is not Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor and the father of Shechem. But why should we serve him? Would that this people were under my hand, then I would remove Abimelech. I would say to Abimelech, increase your army and come out. When Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gal, the son of Abed, his anger was kindled. And he sent messengers to Abimelech secretly, saying, behold, Gal, the son of Abed, and his relatives have come to Shechem, and they are stirring up the city against you. Now therefore, go by night, you and the people who are with you, and set an ambush in the field. Then in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, rise early and rush upon the city. And when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you may do to them as your hand finds to do. So Abimelech and all the men who were...
That's all right. Perfect. Good.
I like that everybody's anxious to read. This is awesome. So Abimelech rules over, this is the first king, by the way. He's not truly monarch over all of Israel. Saul was the first over all of Israel. It says he ruled over Israel, but it's just a limited part of Israel. He's a city king or a county king, if you will. And God sends an evil spirit, and people question that. They question God's sovereignty as this story, but God is taking control, and he's going to fix the situation. These people have killed 70 innocent people on one stone, and God sends a spirit that is going to create conflict, that's going to bring justice in his perfect way. And he's bringing it because of the violence to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal, because of what happened. In verse 25, the leaders put men in ambush against him on the mountaintops, and they robbed all who passed by. So what happens is these guys who have turned now on Abimelech, they decide, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put people on Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, and as passengers come through bringing tribute to Abimelech, we're going to rob them, so that we're robbing the tribute that's going to come to Abimelech. And then this guy raises up named Gal, and he moves in, and the people of Shechem are like, okay, we like you. We want you to be our leader. And so he's celebrating. He goes in, and he goes into the festival with grapes from the vineyards. They trot them out. They bring out the wine, and they drank, and they reviled Abimelech. And Gal, the son of Ebed, and you can just hear him, who's Abimelech? And who is the people of Shechem? And so, and that we should serve him. Is he not the son of Jerubbaal? And is Zebul not his officer? Serve the men of Hamor. Hamor was the father of Shechem. Hamor is the one that comes to Jacob and says, we want to be your people. And so Gal is saying, no, you need to understand, Abimelech is half Jew, and I am full Canaanite. You want to be with me. I'm full Canaanite. We need to get rid of him. I wish I was up there. I wish the people were under my hand, because you know what I would say? I would say, Abimelech, just increase your army and come fight me. Just bring it on. And so then the leader of Zebul, the ruler of the city, hears it. And so he is working for Abimelech. So he's the ruler of the city. He's working for Abimelech, and he's angry. And he's like, okay, let's do this. Behold, Gal and his relatives are doing this. So what you need to do is you need to go up and hide in the mountains. And when they come down, you just need to come out and crush them and do whatever you want them to do. And there's not a practical takeaway, which is why you jump to the next thing. But there's one thing that is relevant in this story. As you step back and look at all of the characters and everyone that's aligning with each other and what they're doing, you need to think about the personal relationships that are being established here and the personal relationships that you have. In the relationships that you're investing your time, are those relationships that are based on integrity and loyalty? Are they edifying you? Are they growing you? Are you putting time into relationships that are going to glorify God? Because none of these relationships are doing that. And that is going to be the death fall of every single one of them. All right, Catherine. Go ahead.
Excuse me?
Yes, excuse me.
So Abimelech and all the men who were with him rose up by night and set an ambush against Shechem in 4 companies. And Gal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance of the gate of the city, and Abimelech and the people who were with him rose from the ambush. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, "Look, people are coming down from the mountaintops." And Zebul said to him, "You mistake the shadow of the mountains for men." Gaal spoke again and said, "Look, people are coming down from the center of the land, and the one company is coming from the direction of the diviner's oak." And then Zebul said to him, "Where is your mouth now, you who said, 'Who is Abimelech, that we should serve him?' Are not these people whom you despised? Go out now and fight with them." And Gaal went out at the head of the leaders of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him. And many fell wounded up to the entrance of the gate. And Abimelech lived in Arumah, and Zebul drove out Gaal and his relatives so that they could not dwell in Shechem. On the following day, the people went out into the field, and Abimelech was told. He took his people and divided them into 3 companies and set an ambush in the fields. And he looked and saw that the people coming out of the city, so he rose against them and killed them. Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate into the city, while the 2 companies rushed upon all who were in the field and killed them. And Abimelech fought out against the city all that day. And he captured the city and killed the people who were in it, and he razed the city.
Right.
Thank you. And sowed it with salt. And when all of the leaders of the town of Shechem heard of it, they entered the stronghold of the house of Elberth. Abimelech was told that all the leaders of the town of Shechem were gathered together, and Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, and he and all the people who were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a bundle of brushwood and took it up and laid it on his shoulder. And he said to the men who were with him, "What you have seen me do, hurry and do as I have done." So every one of the people cut down his bundle and followed Abimelech and put it against the stronghold. And they set a stronghold on fire over them, so that all the people of the tower of Shechem also died, about 1,000 men and women.
Okay. So they set up on the mountains, Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal. Zebul comes out in the morning with Gaal, and they're looking up in the mountains, and he can see these things moving. And Zebul, who is loyal to Abimelech, says, No, you're just seeing shadows. You're just seeing shadows. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. He's like, No. I see a guy there, and I see a guy over beside the oak coming at me right now. And he's like, "Okay, Mr. Big Mouth, now." That's right. That's exactly right, Mr. Big Mouth. Where is your mouth now? Looky at who's been dissing him. You go after him. Who is Abimelech that we should serve him? Isn't that what you said? It's awesome. Are these people not the one you despise? And so Abimelech chases them, and they fight all that day, and they chase Gaal all the way. But he has 4 companies, which is probably 400 men. If we look at 3 companies that Gideon had, the 300 men, there's probably 400 men. And somehow this day they chase Gaal, and they rid themselves of him. But they can't get into this fortified city. And so the next day they lay in wait, they stay out there, and the farmers come out in the morning, and they have 2 companies left. These farmers come out, and 2 companies attack and kill all of the farmers that are coming out. And they rush as fast as they can, and they get to that gate. They get to the gate, and they break in the gate. All of the people in Shechem only have enough time to get into the tower. They get into the tower, and go to slide 20. They get into the tower, and this is additional ruins from Shechem. And this archaeological find shows that that there was no habitation from 1150 BC to 975. And if you look at this story takes place 1125 to 1100. This is roughly the exact same time where Shechem is raised and ceases to exist. This story ties in. So basically, Abimelech comes to this tower. He brings wood, and he burns them alive, 1,000 people, and then he pours salt all over, symbolic that nothing is going to be here, and nothing was there for all that length of time. If we go to slide 21, and the bramble said to, and I want you to recall, this is Jotham, and the bramble said to the trees, "If in good faith you're anointing the king over you, me king over you, then come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, let fire come from the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. And fire came from Gideon, and he totally burned them up. Let me read 50 in the rest in the interest of time. Then Abimelech went to Thebez, which was about 7 miles away, and he encamped against Thebez. So evidently this town was involved. And there he built, but there was a strong tower in the city, and the men and women of the leaders of the city went to it and shut themselves in. And they went up to the roof of the tower, and Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it and drew near to the door. And a certain woman threw an upper millstone, roughly 18 inches in diameter, on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. And then he called quickly for the young man and his armor bearer and said, "Draw your sword and kill me, lest they say a woman killed me." God forbid a woman killed me, is what he's saying. God forbid a woman kill me. Go to slide 23. Kapow. Perfect. That's Jeff's translation. And when the men of Israel saw Abimelech was dead, everyone departed to his home. They just went away. And isn't it sweet justice that 70 men died on one stone and one woman threw one stone out and killed this guy that was not a judge? Slide 24. The practical takeaways. Ambition without accountability to God breeds chaos. Proverbs 16, pride goes before destruction and the haughty before the fall. Number 2, truth tellers may stand alone, but they shape legacy. We are to be grounded in truth. Cry aloud. Do not hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet and declare to my people their transgression. Lastly, God's justice is patient, precise, and unavoidable. God may allow evil to run its course, but he never overlooks it. His justice will come. Amen? Any questions or thoughts or comments about Abimelech? Are y'all liking Judges? Isn't Judges awesome?